Welcome to Retro Skill Modeling. This is part 7 of the AMT Star Trek Next Generation USS Enterprise NCC 1701C. Now, in this part, I'm going to be dealing with the hull assembly, putting in the lights. As you can see there, I'm doing secondary hull assembly there. That's where we left off on part 6. So part 7, putting in the lights and then closing up the actual hull itself. So let's jump into this. So to begin with, I'm painting the saucer section in 05 white by Rebel Aquacolor, and that's just the rim where the two parts met. So I'm just putting a touch of white paint on that as the base coat. This is primarily as well to see whether I'll be needing any filling or whatever, as the paint does help show up any imperfections as you go along, like primer does as well. It says to put in the little dome, so I'm just using the canopy glue here, put a little bit inside before I place the part in. Now this is a very tight fitting, so you're going to have to press it down quite firmly for it to fit inside the housing. As you can see, I'm putting a lot of pressure on there just to pop it in, but it does go in flush. And then a little light test to see whether everything is working. As I said before in the other video, I always check every time I do something different to the model to make sure everything is working, and that helps backtrack any problems that may arise. So there's the dome lit up. So it's now onto the main hull, and to place lights in here, I'm going to have to place in a little bit of plastic card, one in the center and one near the top. So I'm just measuring out the parts that I need to, well, the length I need to cut out the plastic card. For the width, I just use the lights as a guide. So I'm just marking the width up before I cut it. And once I'm happy with it, it's just a simple case of drawing my hobby knife along my edge. Now this can be placed either underneath the secondary hull or above it. I'm placing it underneath. The reason for that is I haven't quite worked out how I'm going to connect the secondary hull and nacelle lights to the main power source yet. So I'm going to put it in there so I can just carry on with the build. And then I got the strip of LEDs to size. Now you're generally wanting a bank of 6 here to do this. Also, you want to do it on both sides. So you're going to need 2 strips for this part. Well, this is for the middle section here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut out a little groove here, and the reason for that is if I do put it up against the light will actually impede slightly on this little ridge, so I'll just cut out a little bit. It's only a supporting bar anyway, so I'll just cut that a little bit. But what I've also done is I've made a little one, for a 3 strip light, and I shall be putting that here like so. I'm applying the same process as I did to the saucer section, just prepping the strip light. So on the contact points, and just adding a little bit of solder. So if you remember, I put a little bit of solder flux onto the points before adding the solder. So I'm just soldering all the contact points here. I'm putting a little bit of isolating tape on the end there just to secure the solder parts. I don't think I'll be using those parts before taking off the backing and placing it on the bit of plastic card. So as you can see there, I've cut the wires, and I'm just going to be tinning them now. This is an important process of soldering. Make sure you tin your wires beforehand. when you're doing it, you don't want to put too much solder on either. Just a little bit, that's all that's required. And once the wires are tinned, it's just a simple case of soldering the wires onto the contact points that I soldered onto the strip lights earlier on. And they just push in after heating up the solder, and you just push in the wire into the contact point. It's very simple to do. And then it's a light test to make sure everything's working. Again, I can't express this enough how vital it is to light test as you go along. I did find this out to my detriment. Later on, as I'm doing this, the lights actually went wrong and I had to backtrack. But I'll get to that. So that's all the lights connected to each other. So I'm just doing the final light test before I place them in. Now you may notice on the smaller one it's a bit brown where the connections are. I tested them and everything there was fine. Before I put the lights in, I'm just going to put the housing in to contain the rod. So first of all, I'm just painting this, and it's getting painted in the light blue colour. And I'm putting in the clear part for the impulse engines. So I'm using a bit of the canopy glue here, just to put in the recess before putting the clear part in. Make sure you get it the right way around. It can only really fit flush one way, but just make sure you get it the right way around. You don't want to be mucking about too much with it and leaving all fingerprints and glue marks on it. But once it was on, it was easy enough to fit into the side of the hull. There's a nice little guide for it to fit up again. So it's time to fit in the lights. I put the top one in first, placed it on the plastic card. Now I had to do this a second time. I did have a problem with the lights. Remember I pointed out that little dark and brown area? I had actually burnt out one of the contact points, and it was only hanging on by a bare thread, really. So when I done the light test, everything was fine. But when I done a test fitting to close up the hull, the lights kept on flickering off. And it wasn't until then that I realised the problem. So what happened was I had to go back and redo the whole lighting system because it was shorting out the whole strips. So what you're seeing here is going to be slightly different from when I show you closing it up. The configuration is just a little bit different. Instead of connecting the lights in a certain way, one way, I connected the top light to the bottom light via the middle connections and not the end connections. That was just to give me a bit more stability while putting on the other half of the hull. I wasn't quite happy with the colour of the impulse engines. I wanted to go a little bit more redder than it was. So what I did was I placed a little bit of film in the inside or over the light, as you can see just at the top there. And I used a sweet wrapper for this. Now this is just the cellophane wrapper from a chocolate sweet, and you get them from various tins or like Quarter Street, things like that. And keep the wrappers because they come in handy. This will tint the warp nacelle darker red, not the impulse engine, sorry, darker red, and gives off a nice glowing effect. Also works on blue and yellow as well. So it's always worth keeping them and just securing it with a little bit of glue at the back, as you can see there. And when I light this up, you'll see the glow. I'll have to turn it around a bit. There we go. See, that's a better colour than I had before. Before I move on, I have to prepare the warp nacelles. So this is the secondary hull part here, and as you can see and watch the previous videos, I've already pre-wired this. So now I've got to just drill a couple of holes in the rear part, well, the bottom part of the nacelle housing. So I just use my pen drive, then open it up with my hobby knife. And after a test fitting, it's time to do the other one. Now, these nacelles only go on the A Pacific strut. There's a little housing inside that dictates what strut it goes on. This will have to be removed before you place your wires in. So just keep a note which strut goes where if you're going to be doing this. So while I'm there, I'm going to use the light blue colour to paint the edges of the secondary hull. It's just a thin strip that runs along the edge. So before I can wire it all up properly, I have to put in the secondary hull and put in just the half part in first. Now if you just line that up with the notches at the right at the centre of the base, it just fits in, and then you can see where I'm going to be putting the wires. Now it's important to remember that each nacelle has two different, one set of wires, so there's two different sets of wires, and both of them will need to be connected up. So once I had a look at it, I decided to connect the neutrals to the cable that's going to be running into the surface section. That way I don't really have to solder onto the lights, and it gives a good connection and power source all the way through, so it's creating another ring. If you do it this way, make sure you've got a nice bit of tail end of wire showing so that you can twist it on. I recommend using a pair of pliers or a specific tool, dedicated tool, to do this, and because you want to get a firm connection. And once you do it, just do a light test, but do a light test on each side to make sure the power is running through, because you don't want to be closing this up and realize that you didn't you don't want to close it up and realize that you didn't connect one properly and all of a sudden it won't light up. So that's the second side tested. Looking at it, I decided that I wanted another strip of lights going down the other half of the hull. I left it a bit late in the day to decide on that, but I thought the light would be more evenly distributed, especially if you look through the deflector shield. You'll see one side glow more than the other, so I thought, now I'll put another strip in, and it's purely for that. So what I did was I took another strip, I had a little bit of wire and made a bridging wire from where the saucer section neck is, and then soldered them onto the middle section of the strip of wires here. So the lights, so the strip of lights are the same on the original side I done. There's a piece of plastic card and a set of 6 strips on each side. However, because I didn't leave myself a lot of room and for the cables, I had to just have all 12 lights connected as one, so I didn't cut at the 6-point mark and just wrapped them around a piece of plastic card. Now this is quite dangerous to do because these things are a bit fragile when you bend them, and there's a chance that you could actually break the connection. So if you're doing it, don't make it a sharp bend right conforming to the corner that you're flipping the lights over to. So I have it as a sort of a bulbous end, that way it will just curve over without breaking. So it's time to attach the other half of the hull. If you have put a secondary set of lights in the way I have, you can either attach it to that secondary hull or to the main hull itself, and it's entirely up to you, whatever you find easier. I let it float in a little bit until to see exactly where I wanted to put it, and just put a little dab of super glue on to secure it. So as a final light test before I close it up, I'm going to be doing a light test on 4 points here, 2 nacelles, one where the neck is, and of course the where the main power is going to be coming from. So once I was happy with the lights, it was time to close it all off. So just be careful where you're putting your glue as well. You don't want it to be impeding too much on wires. Just a little bit down the seams is all that's required. Well, I'm going to be bringing part 7 to an end now. As you can see, I'm just clamping it up to get everything in position. It needed quite a bit heavy clamp to pull it all together. In part 8, I'll be filling up any light bleeds and taking care of the seam lines and so forth. If you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the other videos for this build, the Enterprise build, or indeed the channel to see if there's something there that may interest you. Subscribe to the channel for any updates and of course the upcoming updates for this build. Hit that like button and of course leave any comment. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.